All right, everyone. One of the major hallmarks of Trump's departure from past Republicans really was his willingness to at least talk about the issue of Israel and Palestine. Now, I know, like, you'll say, well, W tried to hammer out peace agreements. Yeah, for a very short time he went over. He basically coddled Israel, said a few nice things about Palestine. Oh, you know, this is regrettable, so much violence. And he said, well, can we have this two-state solution, please? And they said, no. And he said, well, okay, I give up. This is too hard for me. And he went back to playing cowboy over in neighboring countries. That's what W did. Bill Clinton basically did the same, though. Like, all of these different people. Actually, here's one thing. Obama, surprisingly enough, this is something that I thought was amusing. Obama, of all people, actually was the first president in recent times to address the issue in a serious manner. Past presidents, it didn't matter whether they were Democrats or Republicans, they would show up, shake a few hands, take a few pictures, say, yeah, it'd be nice if we had peace, and they would go home. That's all that they did, because they didn't want to stand up to the Israeli government on one end, because they're like, well, you know, your country's basically a giant military checkpoint for us. And we pump so much money into it, and you have, like, you know, hydrogen weapons, so we don't really want to piss you off too much, because that's, you know, it's not something we want to deal with. We'd rather, you know, if you're going to nuke things, we want you to be on our side. Basically, I think it's basically a bribe to them. Obama came along and he said, well, yeah, but, you know, the Israeli government needs to tone it down a little. There were people who called him anti-Semitic at the time. Now, here's the funny part. The claims against Obama, actually, that came from parts of the right are now being aimed at, like, Trump and his fans by the establishment in total. Oh, these anti-Semites, because, you know, they want to actually fairly talk about this issue and they don't sit there saying, well, Israel 100%, Palestine doesn't exist, you know, who cares about these people? I would say this, as I've said consistently for many years. The Israeli government's nuts. The Palestinian Authority is nuts. The people that run the show over there are all crazy. They're also all warmongers. Look, they get rich off this shit. The people on the ground, both within Israel and Palestine, are the ones that are suffering. You know, you think at some point the civilian populations and indeed the relative military forces would all come together and realize, hey, you know, it's basically a bunch of idiot politicians and some militants that are making us miserable. You know, we could probably solve this problem ourselves. It's called an uprising, but, you know, of course, no one wants to do that. It makes it extremely complicated to talk about the issue when it's been boiled down to a partisan issue over and over. Like during the Obama presidency. Now, all the Republicans are like, well, we must stand with Israel. Obama said something semi-unkind about their leader, therefore he's like anti-Semitic. Oh, that's traitorous, horrible. No, we must stand with the Holy Land. Trump comes along, and then the shoe's on the other foot, and he says, well, yeah, we're at least going to try to work with Palestine. You know, I think we need a two-state solution. It'll be the hardest deal to strike, but we're at least going to try. And then he's like, yeah, today, he's talking about the PLO's office in D.C. is actually going to stay open. A lot of people expected him to close it. Look, when he campaigned, he said, well, I'd like to work with both sides. No one's perfect. Let's, you know, peace is preferable to, you know, just grandstanding and shit, which was commendable. That was like the right way to go. As soon as he took office, he immediately swung around, I think, to coddle like the McCains of the party and said, well, you know, Israel's great, you know, the greatest ally, basically. When he realized the never-Trumpers, like the rhinos, weren't going to work with him, like John McCain is never actually going to do anything for the rest of his life, because, you know, probably Trump will be in office that whole period. When he realized he's never going to get the cooperation of the real hardline neocon warmongers, he said, well, fuck it, I'm going to go back to my campaign pledge, which is, yeah, I'm going to try to hammer out a deal. Hell, maybe some of the Democrats, I guess, will get on board. But you got to realize one thing. It's another little act of his. He's basically a business Democrat anyway, which a lot of people don't realize. Like, you think Trump is far right because business Democrats have been left behind by the Democratic Party. I pointed this out earlier. People keep posting this semi-bullshit. It's skewed. It's semi-bullshit. The picture, the graph that shows sort of the ideological alignment of Republicans and Democrats over each decade. And around 2014, they start to pull apart. And now they're like, they're so far apart, you know, horrible thing. Like, people are joining the lunatic fringe. Number one, that's not true. That's just saying, well, anything outside of the Overton window is bad, which is not necessarily the case. I would say that the establishment, the neo-lib neocons that have been running the show for so long, I would say that's the worst of all. I'd say the fringe left and fringe right both have more redeeming qualities than the establishment does. Just my fucking opinion. But that's the lay people. The politicians are all joined at the hip. The neocons and neoliberals, like 90% of the people in the federal government, are part of that very thin center. They're being left behind by both the right and the left, which is why the Democratic Party's having problems. Here's the secret. Trump is a mild populist reformer. He looks far right, but only when judged against establishment politicians. You judge him against most of his own fans, he's the centrist. Hillary Clinton, meanwhile, stuck to that neoliberal sort of platform, so the left has shifted away from her. The Democratic Party has gone further left. Can't energize him. Trump was willing to go a little bit outside of the normal GOP comfort zone. Again, mild reform. Not far right. Not a Nazi. Not even really, I don't even know if we can call him really a populist at this point. But he's willing to be kind of, sort of populistic, a little bit of a paleocon on at least a few things, and he doesn't do the moral haranguing. That's so important. It makes him so much more palatable. Like, if he were to turn into a Bush, oh, you know, traditional marriage, and we need to do something about these fucking abortions. No, you know, I'm going to listen to everything Jeff Sessions says about marijuana. If he were to do that, like, I wouldn't be able to support the dude. Because it'd be like, okay, well, it's the same old GOP. Which would mean the things that he was doing that were different, most of which were better than in the past, he would have given up. Palestine and Israel is one of the important ones. It is good to be able to have bilateral talks there. You can't do that if the only country that's interested in solving the problem. Most of the Europeans, they're totally on board with, we need to liberate Palestine and enforce them being sovereign. Other countries are like, well, no, Israel, we recognize, Palestine could kiss our asses. The United States is the only one even making an attempt, it seems, to really solve the situation. But the problem is past presidents, they looked at it as, if I just show up as the leader of the free world with all of my charisma, you know, all that W and Obama and people like them have ever had, then things magically will get better. And when they realize that it doesn't work that way, when they realize that it's more complex than showing up and shaking somebody's hand, they give up. Trump's not the sort that does that. He's the sort where if he fails at first, he gets pissed. And then he tries twice as hard and allocates twice as many resources the next time. That's my reading of his character. You don't get where he got without being like that. You got some career politician who was chosen like Obama because he had a pretty face, you know, and was relatively young, and he's able to be a great speaker occasionally. You have somebody like that, they count on their charisma to get ahead because it's how they've gotten ahead. You know, or a Bubba Bill, same thing. Or W. What was W? Oh, successful businessman, powerful daddy. That's why he got elected. He was basically just kangarooed in there because he happened to have a father who had already been a president. Oh yeah, I had a president daddy, I got lots and lots of money, and you know, all these corporations know they can puppet me around. That's why I got elected. We haven't had effective leadership in DC for a while. Trump is an effective leader in at least the business sense. W didn't have to be. He was handed everything by his already rich family. Bubba Bill and Obama were charismatic figureheads. So that's a while that we've gone without sane diplomatic leadership. I think that Trump is better for diplomacy. Say what you will about how he treats Trudeau or how he talks about, you know, Merkel. Those don't matter. Germany is already on the decline. Canada's not going to do jack shit. We've got a huge border. We're right next to each other. We've had relations for centuries. They're not going anywhere. There are other things we can focus on. I think Trump is the one to tackle them. If he were to successfully tackle, I give maybe a 10% chance he's successful, even if he gets 2 terms. But if there's even a chance of having stable 2-state solution or one state, it doesn't matter. Some stability between Israel and Palestine. You realize how popular he'd become? Be the most popular president in the last half century. Now, that's not aiming very high because, of course, I think JFK is outside of that half century at this point. So his main competitor is semi-senile Ronald Reagan. But hey, it could be worse. He could be another Obama or another W and not even bother talking about the issue half the time. Obama says to their president, You know, you need to calm down. Everyone says anti-Semite, anti-Semite. Obama steps back and says, okay, I'm just not going to talk about it anymore. Fuck you people. That's what Obama did. W, he didn't even try. He just wanted to go over and, I don't know, he wanted to celebrate he wanted to go to the Wailing Wall over and over to show how religious he was. That's basically what presidents do. They use the so-called Holy Land. They go over to the Wailing Wall or whatever, and they always pose there. They look very solemn. Oh, it's just a big act. It's a bunch of bullshit. They don't even believe in that stuff. They do it for show. Smile for the cameras. Look somber. Remember what happened in World War II. And they don't even really, they don't think about it on a day-to-day basis. These people just do it for show. It's sort of like a weird ritual that we have here in the United States. I think it's on the unfortunate side of the weird rituals we have. It's like the good rituals. Threw out a baseball. Okay, well, you know, I may not like sports. A lot of people do, and it's, you know, it's harmless. Throw out the ball. Go to a football game. Pardon the turkey. You know, fun stuff like that. Not going over and pretending to be hyper-religious once every year for diplomatic purposes. It's just so moronic. That's about all. Peace out.